current generation, right, is less insecure.
Do you think you're already a step ahead in terms of experience? If you are not a CEO and a co-founder, what else would you be? What are your alternate choices?
Love to be a teacher.
Do you think that going to an IIT or such premier institutes has an edge over students that don't get to do so in our entrepreneurial journey? Not
You are almost on the verge of opening a restaurant. Let the kids choose their own journey. I think end of the day, it really depends on how much you are also willing to tap into your own family's knowledge bank as well.
why are our engineers becoming more and more unemployed?
You probably are hitting the right nerve. See, I would certainly argue that preparation for any competitive exam really helps. There's no question about it. So I took a year drop, and during that time was really when I got into a coaching center which was offering an IIT stream as well, and that's how I really prepared myself to give the JEE exams. I think the choice is yours, right? Do you react to a problem or do you respond to a problem? The chances of success are far lesser than the chances of failure.
Correct.
Right? And but then the journey is tremendously enjoyable. The journey is tremendously fulfilling. Do try it out.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Yatma podcast. I'm Vishal, and today's guest is Vijay Sunkeshwari, the CEO and co founder of Tarento Group. In this discussion, we have discussed in lengths about entrepreneurship, Indian education system, the power of teamwork, the power of friendship, and also the journey for a young Indian entrepreneur to be successful. I'm sure you're going to derive a lot of lessons, a lot of insights from this discussion. So relax, sit back, and enjoy. How are you feeling today?
Oh, it's been a good day. I mean, pretty nice Bangalore weather, and I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me on this podcast.
Yeah. I think Bangalore has started to, become back. It has started to Bangalore again, how it was before, but I think we all can enjoy some rains in Bangalore after the heat wave that we had.
Yes. So no, I must say I'm not from Bangalore. I come from the neighboring state Andhra. But then we happen to be culturally Kannadigas, and I'm in love with Bangalore for sure. So this is my third stint in my professional career in Bangalore. I have lived, in Chennai, Hyderabad, and even in Singapore. But Bangalore happens to be the place where I've spent the best part of my career, and it really feels like home. So I'm quite attached to Bangalore, and I like being in Bangalore at any point in time. I know the summer was pretty hot, but still, I guess we were doing better than rest of the major parts of the country. So yeah,
I think that is good. That
Bangalore is beautiful. That's how I would put it.
Yeah, great. So, so today in the discussion, we probably want to understand your journey, right? Right from your early days to your entrepreneur journey, to the challenges that you have faced, and we will also want to understand how you went about those challenges and overcame, and then built Tarento to what it is today with your partners and all your team. Apart from that, anything that you're interested in, we would be glad to dive deep into. So, like we were discussing just before the podcast began, so there is one feeling that is pretty common, or at least that is my opinion. You could say that this whole entrepreneurship, as such, right? It takes a very I'm not sure if it takes a very special capability, but this entrepreneurial nerve is something that is missing in most of India. From the last decade, or maybe for the last 2 decades, we have this whole rise of startups and entrepreneurship blooming in India. But back in the days, like maybe before, maybe in the early 90s or 80s, I'm not sure how how much of enterprises were coming up in India, right? So one thing that I would want to understand before we pitch into your life and early details as such is, what do you think has caused this wave of entrepreneurs in India in the last decade? What has changed in India that has brought so many entrepreneurs and so many companies?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's. I mean, my own personal experience, if you ask me, would be the current generation, right, is less insecure. They have the stability, and probably they have access to the information, and they also have the necessary financial backing from their parents and all if needed. So uh, the current generation is bold, and they probably are willing to take a lot more risks than what we would have undertaken. However, on the other hand, I would also say that the options to become an entrepreneur, right? Even the social acceptance wasn't very high a few decades before. So, I mean, one of the popular things that all of us would have encountered is, that when you typically want to get married, right? If people are in businesses, then would parents be willing to, have their girl marry that boy, has been one big question as well. So, uh, and maybe they had their own valid reasons, right? But then on the other hand, I think today's youth is a lot more risk taking. They are willing to do this bit of experiment for sure. And as I said, I think the acceptance in the society, even for failed entrepreneurships or failed entrepreneurs, is certainly, it's not looked upon as a stigma anymore. So I think the overall acceptance part becoming high on the whole has also given a ripple effect of people willing to try out new ventures on their own. That's really how I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with you. I think there was a time when there was a social stigma around entrepreneurs and
Businesses.
businesses, right? But so that's what kind of that's what makes me curious as to how did you find that social acceptance, given that as you mentioned, you come from a place like you come from Sunkeshwari, which is in Andhra Pradesh, and yeah.
Yeah.
So and then with the family background that you have, was it? I mean, we want to know about your early life first, and then probably we'll go to the next one.
Yeah. So, maybe to some extent, entrepreneurship runs in the family. So, my grandfather was, running his own paint or color business, so to say. So, I was born and brought up in Adoni, which is typically called as, which is very popular for cotton business. So, there was a time when a lot of cotton mills and all apparently were there in that region. I've never seen it. By the time I was born, that whole thing was gone, so to say. So, my grandfather was running a paint or a color dyeing dye shop or a business, so to say, is at least what my father keeps telling me all the time. And as I said, I come from this place called Adoni, which is near Mantralayam. Most of us would know Mantralayam,
Yes.
right? Very popular for the Raghavan Swami temple there. And Adoni is like 50 kilometers from Mantralayam, and I was, I spent all my early childhood there, and we were part of a big joint family. It was really good to be growing together with a bunch of, your, own siblings and cousins and all of them as well. So it was actually quite good. And as I said, right, I mean, in some ways, uh, I would argue that I have seen a lot of people within my own community also do business. So when you go to Mantralayam, that's where my mother comes from, right? A lot of people run their own. They don't call themselves as fancy entrepreneurs, but they probably call themselves as people who are running a shop or who are running a hotel or a lodge or whatever. So in that regard, I have certainly seen a lot of people around me do their own businesses for sure. So maybe in that way, when I look back, people not doing a regular job, but people trying to run businesses for their
Living.
own living is not something that I have not seen before. So maybe there was an indirect influence. So when I look back, right, I mean, I had never really thought about it, but while I was coming in the car, I was actually thinking about it. There are a lot of people within my circle who run their own businesses,
Okay.
right? I mean, as I said, right, I mean, if you go to Mantralayam, a lot of people run their own small enterprises, so to say. So I think that way, there are a bunch of people who probably were direct or indirect influencers in whatever I did as well.
Great. I think in that front, maybe you were fortunate. I think because also, I mean, you had a family where your grandfather was an entrepreneur himself, and then also your surroundings and people that you. But what I would want to understand is, let's say there is a person who does not come from a background, right? Who does not have a background where there was an entrepreneur before, or maybe he's the first generation entrepreneur in his life. So there is one person on, so there is that person on one side, and another person who has had friends, acquaintances, and families who have already been business owners in the past. For both of these people, do you think that coming from a family business or coming from an environment where there were a lot of business owners has an edge over the other person? And if it isn't, then in what terms? Like, do you think you're already a step ahead in terms of experience?
Yeah, I would certainly feel it's an advantage. It's like this, right? For a person to become a doctor, if his parents are doctors, it probably makes it a lot more easy, right?
Right.
So if you are coming from a business family, so to say, then you certainly will have an advantage for sure. Of course, if your parents are too, I mean, I would say interfering, then sometimes it can also be a disadvantage. But to a large extent, I would argue that if there is an experience, if there is a experience bank that you can tap into within the family, it certainly is an advantage in my opinion. So that way, for somebody to start afresh, if somebody is a first generation entrepreneur in the family, so to say, then they would certainly have to learn a lot of things on their own. Maybe they do some mistakes which somebody who comes from an experienced family background will not do. So there will be a certain edge, but I would again argue that at some point in time, legacies can be, a fallacy or a handicap as well. So I think end of the day, it really depends on how much you are also willing to tap into your own family's knowledge bank as well. But again, the acceptance within the family will be much more higher if you're coming from a background,
Well,
yeah, or a family which already has a certain background. So I mean, if you are fresh, if you are a first gen guy, then the others will certainly have an edge over you, in my opinion.
So, talking of legacies in the family, right? So, like you said, your grandfather had a dye shop, correct? So, do you feel that when there is a legacy of businesses already in the house, the room for innovation is less? Or, like, say, for example, my grandfather had a dye shop, I'll also have a dye shop, my son will have a dye shop. Does it flow that way? Or how much is the room for innovation? Say, for example, in your case, right? Because you had a completely different tangent.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I heard that he had a shop. By the time I was able to understand what's going around me. My grandfather, apparently that business didn't do well, and then he had to close it down, and then he was mostly into some farming or whatever. So things like that. But then for us, it was pretty simple. You had to study well to succeed in life. There was no other choice. So I don't think my parents, ever imagined that, some of their kids would probably get into entrepreneurship or running their own businesses. I doubt that was ever a thought that was running in their mind when we were growing up. Like a typical, lower middle class family or whatever you want to call it, right? So, it was very clear you had to do well in studies to do well in life. So that way, what to do in life was a very simple problem statement, so to say.
Oh,
But then, answering your question, there are, I would argue, like, there are two types of parents. One who want their kids to toe the same line as they are doing, and then the other set of people who probably don't want the kids to come into their own line of business, so to say. So I have seen both schools of thoughts. Here, I would probably argue that the best way is to let the kid choose his or her own path to begin with, and let them experience their own life. And at some point in time, if they want to join that line of business, or that line of profession, then that's good. Otherwise, don't force it, right? I mean, and it's not just about businesses. I would argue, like, a lot of doctors or lawyers want their sons or daughters to become doctors or lawyers. I'm glad engineering is really not that sticky, enforcing
Yeah.
point with parents.
Yeah.
But you would have seen, right? I mean, like, a lot of bank employees want their kids to become bank employees. My dad was a bank employee, but luckily enough, he did not really force us to become bank employees.
Take those bank exams and then
Yeah. Again, nothing wrong in that, but then I would still argue that let the kids choose their own journey. Eventually, if they come back to the same profession, that's well and good. But I have seen in a few cases where kids are really stressed out. I'm a doctor, then my family line has to continue in the medical profession. Hence, the kids are kind of forced to become doctors or lawyers and all. I feel that's an unnecessary pressure. Same goes with businesses as well, right? I mean, if parents are running a certain line of business, it's not necessary that the kids want to come into the same line as well. So, I would argue let the kids choose what they want to do, and that's probably a better balance for everyone.
true. I think this trend also has been growing in India in the last few years, is what I believe. Because as you mentioned, there was a time when parents always wanted their children to follow the same line that they did. But in the recent maybe times, I think that's changing. So that's one good thing for us, is what I believe. So
Yeah. Again, maybe it's also to do with our own experience as well. I have seen a few cases where parents are very insistent on children doing their same line of profession as well, right? I mean, and it could be as well to do with a professor's sons, I mean, being forced to get into the education stream or whatever, right? So, I mean, I really hope that doesn't happen, right? I mean, in fact, I would like to really believe that the trend that you are talking about is the mainstream, and what I'm referring to are like exceptions. So I really hope parents really encourage their kids to become whatever they want to, instead of forcing them to become a stereotype that they want them to become.
absolutely. So I'm continuing on the same lines. So let's say for example, I want my son or daughter to pursue their path, right? And they say maybe I want to be an entrepreneur. Let's say at a very young age, maybe when there are like fourth standard, fifth standard kids saying I want to become an entrepreneur, I want to start my own business or anything. So as a parent, like there is a trajectory that you have to carve out for them, because until a point they will actually not know what exactly they have to do, right? So and when we were trying to understand your journey, so from a person in Adoni is living in a family, a bank employee son, from there to becoming an entrepreneur of a technology company, in between having your education through IITs and all of that. So this whole path that you carved out for yourself, first thing is, do you think, or first thing is, how much has this path had an influence on your career? As in, do you think that going to an IIT or such premier institutes has an edge over students that don't get to do so in an entrepreneurial journey, not maybe in a different profession? Or do you think there are different paths a person could take and still reach the same amount of success in entrepreneurial journey that they want?
So it's, I mean, multiple thoughts are running in my head. So let me try to see how I can kind of put them in some logical order. You know, I think the journey that you or one has undertaken plays a huge role in what they are doing today for sure. So in my case, if I had not met these friends or co-founders that I started, the entrepreneurial journey with, I don't think, I would alone I would have undertaken that journey. To be perfectly honest, now when I go back, right? So I wouldn't have met them if I didn't go to my institute, IIT BHU. So there was, because I met them in that institute. Now again, when I go back, right, I probably would not have gone into IIT if I had not taken the risk of dropping a year. So my story goes that I did not do well in my CET exams after my PU or intermediate. We call it intermediate in Andhra. So I did not really do well. And for my rank, I was getting a paid seat in a private college, and I really did not want to put more financial burden on my dad. So I said I will drop a year. And in Andhra, it's very common to drop a year for your to give, yes, engineering or medical exams once again. It's very, very common in Andhra. So I took a year drop, and during that time was really when I got into a coaching center which was offering an IIT stream as well, and that's how I really prepared myself to give the JEE exam. So a series of events happened. So when I look back, was uh, I mean, do I feel that I was born to be an entrepreneur? I really don't think so. I think a sequence of events kept on happening, and somewhere, somehow, the path kind of transformed into whatever shape and form it has taken today. So I would again argue that have a passion for sure. At the same time, when I was in IIT with together with my bunch of friends, we were always looking to do something on our own. So I studied in IIT Varanasi, and then there we kind of wanted to build a portal or a website to help pilgrims or travelers come to Varanasi or Banaras, right? So, and we were also trying to probably do a mutual fund mutual fund kind of a thing, and also we always wanted to do something. And I would argue that I was in a good circle of friends who are always smarter than me, and they kind of really were trying to bring out the best in each of us, and that's really how eventually the journey took this shape and form.
Okay. So I mean, even for an like if you look at people these days, right, and the parents that at least I have interacted to, they prepare their kids for IITs right from a very young age, right, from fifth standard, fourth standard, as early as third standard. But when I listen to your story, it's pretty fascinating that you took a year drop and then you kind of pursued it with all diligence and then cracked it. Of course, that comes with your own capabilities, which are different for different people. But what is your view on people being so how do I say it? So people being so focused, I think that's the right word, on IITs, so that they start preparing from a very young age. Do you think that's necessary, or maybe you can just figure it out as you go, and then you realize, hey, I want to do this, and maybe do it in like a 2-3 years preparation?
So, see, I would certainly argue that preparation for any competitive exam really helps. There's no question about it. So, in my own experience, if let's say your capability is here, if you are able to get the right coaching, right preparation, then your results will certainly go up by a few notches. So, in that regard, coaching, tutoring, mentoring, and the right kind of avenues to help you get better will certainly help. But again, here I would argue that if people are assuming that they are from IITs or they are from AIMS, and hence their kids have to mandatorily take that path, I think that's a fool's paradise. I mean, on a lighter note, I would refer to the movie Three Idiots, right? I mean, it has a good story around what can really happen when there is too much pressure on kids. So, I mean, I have also seen this. I mean, my kids are still young, so let's see, how they fare in their own lives. But you know. I mean, one story that I've heard from one of my seniors, again, he's from one of those IITs, and then his point was, you can clearly see the interest. They may be capable, but you can kind of really gauge the interest levels of your kids and try to help them in their areas of interest, and not blindly expect that they will go to the same premier institute or they will do the same profession as you have done or you have followed. So I mean, it's rather not smart to assume that your kids are exactly the same as you. So don't really try to put pressure on them. Let them follow the path that they want to take, and try to kind of help them and guide them. And you can also steer them in a certain direction. But then, if you believe that they will toe the path that you want them to take, then that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, yeah, that also makes sense. But do you think this pressure is driven mainly by the job market out there, or is it just pure passion that, oh, I was an IIT and my kid has to be an IIT?
Yeah. No, so at least, I mean, in my own friend circle or peer circle, I don't see that, you know, pressure being played out, because all of my friends, been or my seniors in college and all as well, right? So I don't really see that pressure. Again, maybe it happens in some certain pockets, but you know, I really don't see that intentional pressure being put on people, so to say.
Yeah. Okay. But I think, yeah, maybe if you, I mean, since we look at the trends, right? So most of the entrepreneurs that we have in India today, a huge chunk of them come from IITs, whether they are the popular startups that India has had in the last decade. What makes IIT so special that so many entrepreneurs such as you emerge out of them, and why, maybe as a kid, why is it so aspirational to be, to go to an IIT one day?
So I think getting into a premier institute certainly has its own advantages, right? So, and we certainly do talk about IITs or IIMs because they have an edge over others. But then, if you look at it, right? I mean, I remember reading your resume as well. I mean, and you are from Ramaya, right? And that, you know, if you look at it, even in Bangalore, people who come out of Ramaya certainly have an edge over others because of the circle that's there within the institute or the college, so to say. So, I mean, what I found fascinating about my own journey and the time I spent in IIT BHU was the fact that people around you are actually far smarter than you. And, you know, so that kind of really makes you stay,
Always on your
awake and
toes.
on your toes all the time. So I guess, and of course, the faculty is brilliant for sure. The infrastructure is really good and all of it. So that's definitely there, and that can be built even, I mean, if you are able to spend certain amount of money or whatever. But then I guess that the same goes to the Ivy colleges and all as well, right? I mean, it's not just the infrastructure or the faculty, but also the peer group that you are in. So I guess a combination of factors make these premier institutes, good for sure. And at the same time, they offer a platform that you can encash upon. So, I have typically heard that it's easy to raise funds if you are an IIT or an IIM alumni, right? And that's because, there is enough network of people around you that can vouch for you, and you automatically bring in a certain amount of credibility and trust towards the investors or the private equity firms and all as well. So that way, you certainly carry a certain edge over others. So I would argue, I mean, it's like, if you are not from a premier institute, you can still succeed. You can still raise funds. You can probably still, get a lot of help from the ecosystem as well. But then they also look for some credibility. So it's like this, right? So, you certainly carry an edge over others, and coming from such premium institutes certainly gives you, some amount of leverage or benefit over others.
Sounds good. Yeah. So, I mean, now we understood that you always had this, you always had this itch of, kind of innovating, even back in college, where you started building the portal that you mentioned. And you also had a bunch of friends who always pushed you to the next level. So I would want to understand the next phase of the journey then on. So now you have all of this, you have all the raw material that you have to become an entrepreneur one day. how did the idea of Tarento begin? Like, how did the idea of starting something like this start? When did it come, and how did you go about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, in the IIT campus itself, some of us became very good friends, and as I said, we were always talking about doing some things of our own, and none of these ideas ever took off. And during our times in the university or college, for sure, getting out with a job was a mandatory thing. So maybe heart in heart, all of us knew that this journey cannot take off now. So all of us appeared for placements, and then we all got into jobs, and then we all kind of regrouped in Bangalore. So that was a pretty good, nice thing. Eventually, all of us landed in Bangalore, but we were all doing our own jobs. And even during that period, between Rahul and me, my other co-founder, so we are three co-founders, Rahul, KD, and myself. We always wanted to do something on our own. So this is 2002 2003 period where the BPO KPO boom was pretty big. So we tried to do a BPO stuff. There was also medical transcription that was up in the air at that time. So we tried to, again, these were all things on paper. One thing where we came close to starting was we were almost on the verge of opening a restaurant.
Oh, is it?
So
Okay.
yeah. So we were almost ready to take over a defunct restaurant, but then somehow the plans fell through, and then we again went back to our own jobs and all. Around 2009 is when Rahul, KD, and myself, we decided to take the plunge, and we said we will start a software company. Uh, uh, you know, uh, and that's really how our own entrepreneurial journey began.
Okay, that's great. I mean, from having a lot of ideas to then maybe zeroing
Zeroing
down
it.
on a restaurant, then finally doing a software company. I think that is a journey in itself, is what I believe. So let's say, I mean, let's go through the Tarento journey. Maybe a little later, but let's say I'm a 22-year-old, right? I'm just out of my engineering college, and of course I also have friends, maybe a friend like KD and Rahul with me, and who I mean, all three of us are thinking of doing something, but then we don't exactly know what to do, right? Because I think way back in 2002, maybe since there was a BPO boom, and then some of the entrepreneurs had some opportunities. But as a 22-year-old, with maybe two of my friends, how do I conceptualize an idea of starting a company, and how do I go about it? Like, it could be raising funds, it could be pitching ideas to people, it could be building a team, etc., etc. I mean, you know the journey anyway. So, how would I go about it?
So entrepreneurship, I would argue, is really something where you probably need to have that feeling. I mean, I'm not saying that you need to be born with that DNA, so to say. But then, if you are an engineer, right? If you have completed your engineering, then you have multiple paths. It could be higher studies, or it could be probably getting into a job, or you probably get into some research, or you also kind of want to start something on your own, right? So there are multiple paths available. Choose this only if you have at least some portion of your heart telling you that you want to do this. Don't get forced into it, will be my submission. And at the same time, if you are starting this journey with a bunch of friends, then I would argue there's nothing better than that. Friends are really good partners that you can start this journey with, and it comes with a lot of advantages for sure. So if you are around a bunch of friends that want to do something on your own, and your heart says you are okay to try this out, then please do try it out. And I would certainly encourage people to be brave. This is certainly a journey where the chances of success are far lesser than the chances of failure.
Correct. Correct.
Right? And but then the journey is tremendously enjoyable. The journey is tremendously fulfilling. So do try it out. However, I would certainly like to share a few things.
Sure.
One would be, do not expect immediate returns. If you are a fresh graduate starting your entrepreneurial journey, you know absolutely believe that this is longer than your 4-year engineering course. This is probably going to take way more time than that. And once in a while you do hear lucky stories where people get acquired or people are able to raise funds in a very short span of time. Those are extreme exceptions. If that happens to you, that's good, you are lucky. But don't expect that as the as a very like as a very natural thing that can happen to you as well, right? So entrepreneurial journey is extremely grueling. Absolutely do not expect immediate returns. As I said, it's a very very long journey and the chances of success are very very slim. you know so unless you are ready for a long grind, please don't go for it. The second thing I also would like to say is, I have seen a few instances where sometimes the parents are either forced or probably even coerced to part with their life savings to fund their kids' entrepreneurial journeys. I would certainly advise against it. Uh, if you have your own savings, please burn it happily. Nothing wrong with that. But don't dip into your parents' reserves is really something that I would like to suggest to kids, because it's very very easy to lose money. And if you have really dipped into your parents' reserves, then you are really draining them of their lifetime savings and income as well. So absolutely, please don't do that. The other thing I would like to say is, there are setbacks, and the setbacks can happen at any point in time and from totally unexpected quarters. So, if you are expecting that entrepreneurship or running your own business will be a smooth journey, then you are absolutely wrong. Be ready for surprises at all times. So, unless you are brave, unless you are really willing to fight new battles every day, this is not the path for you. However, as I said before, if you are willing to embrace the unknown, if you are willing to jump into this exciting journey, then it is a lifetime experience. I was also trying to think about it. And it's like, you go on treks as well, right?
Yes.
You can as well walk or run in Bangalore itself. But then taking a trek is a thrilling experience. The kind of life experiences it offers, the kind of new things that you get used to or you get exposed to are like very very different. So if you want a happy life, in Bangalore, then you can as well go to a gym or walk in Lal Bagh and all, right? But then so if you really want to experience the thrill of it, if you want to experience something which others haven't, and you are willing to take some risks as well, then this is a beautiful journey to take forward.
I mean, as I hear, it's a proper roller coaster ride where there is thrill on one side, on the other side, maybe at points there is nervousness, at points there are these joys of success. So what we would want to understand is, how do you handle both of these? Like, say for example, when let's say there is a big problem, and without that, so it's like a blocker. You can't just move ahead. How do you kind of compose yourself and manage that situation at the same time when maybe there's a great success, as it feels like you have already reached the pinnacle of your startup. So in that time, how do you ensure that you don't just get carried away in that euphoria? How do you manage this to make sure that your idea, your business is sustainable over a long period of time?
No, so as I said, there are always setbacks. Yeah, there is absolutely no question about it, and similarly, there are wins almost at all times as well. So it's really all about how do you want to or where do you want to focus upon, and at the same time also how do you react or respond. So I think the choice is yours, right? Do you react to a problem or do you respond to a problem? That's really something that one kind of really has to balance it out. And it's very funny, so to say, in uh, a business, after year 1 or 2, you know, s- you will start realizing that success really doesn't happen overnight. If you have won a large project, if you have delivered a tough program, right, it is not an overnight success. It has happened over the course of a lot of months of hard work, long work, and at the same time a lot of effort has gone into it as well. So when you reach the end, the fruits are extremely successful. I mean, the fruits are extremely sweet, and you really have to enjoy the fruits of success for sure. But then don't expect overnight miracles. And for me personally, the way, and there are setbacks as well. Again, here is where I look back upon my own journey, and I feel fortunate enough to be running it with a bunch of friends. So, it has happened more than once where I kind of had a very bad customer call, or we kind of lost a bid or a project or an RFP, so to say. And then I'm like down, and then, I give a call to Rahul or KD, and then, they are happy to hear me out, because I also need a window to vent out my frustration. But at the same time, it also happens that once in a while they surprise me with a pleasant news on their side. So it kind of evens out to a large extent. So, I mean, ups and downs are part of life, but I would argue broadly, things and gods have been favorable to us. So we have been on a ride that has kind of gone in the right fashion. But yes, you lose projects sometimes, that you thought are in your bag. So ups and downs are part of life, is really how I would put it.
I mean, in that way, is it right to say that no matter what good or bad happens, as long as you have a great team with you, and I think you can, you're good on this journey. You can have this journey in a better way.
Yeah. So, if you have a good team, you will never go wrong. That would be my, answer to the kind of, question that you had. If you have a good team, you will probably never go wrong. So, and in this, again, I would say, make sure that you are surrounded with people who are smarter than you, people who are not saying yes to you at all times, and people that you find fun to work with. So, if you are able to surround yourself with the right set of people, then I think the journey would not only be fun but will also be rewarding. Right? That doesn't mean you agree with. I mean, with. I mean, you don't fight with your own partners or friends or your own. There are no disagreements. Yes, there will be disagreements, but all in all, the whole journey will be quite fun.
So speaking of overnight successes, when was or which was your first big win, and how did you, like, how was it? How was the feeling?
Yeah. So it's been I mean, it's been a good ride, as I said before. But if I were to wind the clock back, would I have done anything differently, or would I have expected for a different outcome? I would probably say no. It has been quite a good journey. Of course, it has been quite tough as well. So when we started, we were completely bootstrapped. We did not raise money as investments, nor we had deep pockets that we could dip into as well. So we were like completely bootstrapped, and I remember, borrowing from my father-in-law. Of course, I returned that money, but I really remember borrowing from my father-in-law to fund the first month payroll of employees. And for the first time when I had to travel to Sweden, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a few rich friends who kind of funded my travel as well. So, these are interesting stories when I look back. And was it stressful? Probably yes. But was it fun and enjoyable? I would argue the answer is yes. So a lot of things kind of got added up as part of our journey, and we have definitely had a lot of uh, good nice events as well. So when the first employee that you made an offer to joins you, that itself is a big win at that time, so and when you kind of are able to get a closure in your first deal with the customer, right? I mean, when the customer says yes to your proposal, that's a big win for sure. So a lot of it's very hard for me to say that which one was bigger. I would like to say that there were certainly a few wins which were far more sweeter than others. And when we bagged our first large project in Bangalore, where we were tasked to build a complete electrical vehicle ecosystem. It was in 2015-16 period. We worked with this company called Lithium, where we did the end-to-end applications for them to be able to launch their electrical fleet in Bangalore. They were the first electrical fleet vehicle in the country, so to say. That was pretty exciting. One major thing which kind of has stayed with me for a while has been the launch of the M-Aadhaar mobile app. So, I'm sure most of you have the M-Aadhaar mobile app on your phones, and that's completely built by Tarento. And when the app was launched, when the app went live after 3-4 months of pretty hard work, I still remember that feeling. When I went to bed, I really said, I don't care if Tarento doesn't exist tomorrow. The feeling that I had was probably what Kapil Dev would have had when India won the first World Cup in 1983. That doesn't mean he didn't want to win more. He went on to win a lot more cups as well. But then, that was like the first time feeling, right? So when M-Aadhaar app went live, that was really a pretty good, nice feeling. And this was in 2018-19 period. But after that, we have went on to bag bigger programs. We have went on to win much larger programs, and we have delivered a lot of them successfully as well. But that's one milestone that I could probably never forget.
I think doing something at a population scale and something as M-Aadhaar surely had a huge impact in the whole, not just commerce, but yeah, the whole digital India initiative as
Yes.
such, right? So, so I would say that when you are a team of, say, for example, you start back in 2009, 2010 when you started off, you are a team of one. Maybe you are a team of few people, right? When you go to a customer and say, hey, we are a startup and we are doing this, how do you ensure or how do you win your first customer? Like, if I'm a startup, I have a small team and I want to go and win my first customer, how do I do that?
Yeah. No, I think everybody has their own journeys here, so to say, I would argue. And for us, it was kind of luck or serendipity. So when we started, the first day of the venture, I still remember this was an independent house in RT Nagar, and then we called it an office. It was nothing more than an independent 3 or 4 bedroom house, pretty beautiful, and the landlord was lenient enough to rent it to us, and then let us run a garage shop from there. And we had set up the internet. We had even rented some furniture and laptops and all. And then I was sitting in the office all alone, and I was waiting for Rahul to come online. And this was the time when Skype was the most popular,
Correct.
communication tool. So uh, I was on Skype waiting for Rahul to come online, and then out of the blue, I see a message from one of the acquaintances, and it turns out that he has an IT project to be executed, and he was looking for somebody to hand it off to.
Okay.
So that's really how we got our first lead, so to say. So again, I think if you have the right intention, and your heart says that this is something that you have to do. I think, somewhere, somehow, the forces of nature or God will certainly drive you in that direction for sure. Uh, so my take is, how do you, so that's mostly on a, that can be considered as luck, but from a pathwise, how do you find your first deal, right? I think that is really where the kind of connects you make during your engineering or your professional career. And at the same time, how can you identify opportunities or white spaces in the markets. So there are the right mechanisms as well that you can adopt. So, getting leads from the network can happen only after some of these basic things have been tick marked. So in my case, or in our case, why did this person ping us? Because he knew that we are in the IT field and we could really do something that he was looking for. So you still have to establish certain credentials, so to say. You still really have to establish yourself as relevant in the industry. Once you have been able to do that, getting your first client is not that difficult.
Correct. So, I mean, yeah, I think, as you said, one is your connections that you have built, and then maybe some amount of luck at some point all comes together. So, looking back from 2009, like you mentioned, so from 2009 to 2015 to the lithium project that you spoke about to Yamaha. So, we are at somewhere around 2018, 2019 now when Yamaha happened. But right after that, something big happened in 2020, that was COVID 19, right? So, COVID 19 hit, the pandemic was, it was like something at least people of my generation had never seen before. So the world came to a still stop,
Stand still. Yeah.
right? So at that time, a lot of, I mean, at least I know my friends, acquaintances who were affected very badly because they were working, in different companies and all of that. But my experience at Tarento was a lot different because the way Tarento carried itself through the pandemic was very fascinating. So from a leader's view, I would want to understand how was that journey. When COVID-19 hit, what was your first reaction, and what was your roadmap until this whole pandemic lasted?
Yeah. So, none of us had seen as well, right? So, I think the world hadn't seen such a situation, in the last few decades. So, that was quite unexpected. And when pandemic, or the lockdown, so we wouldn't even call it a pandemic, right? Around March of 2019, we kind of called it a COVID lockdown to begin with, right? So when the lockdown hit, it was certainly a tough time for us personally, and also as a business. So, the priority was kind of pretty simple. We wanted to make sure that all employees are safe. First from their health perspective, and then from their own health perspective, and then that their families are safe as well, right? So our priorities were very, very simple, and that really kind of helped us focus on the most important thing. However, as business, it was really mayhem. The first few weeks we were hit with bad news on the business front, and we really saw our business shrink by about 30-40%. In the first few weeks for sure. Most customers, both in Sweden and in India, would call us and either ask for discounts or ask for team ramp downs because they themselves weren't sure on how the whole thing would actually pan out. So this was certainly a blow that no one was prepared for, and this was really kind of a shock that we ourselves weren't really ready to receive. I think again, we kind of assessed the situation, and the good thing was we didn't panic. We really did not react, but then we kind of sat together at the overall leadership level and then tried to see what options we have and how we can kind of really implement the next step. So we did a town hall with the entire company and conveyed that we on the whole are going through a certain period, a certain uncertain period, so to say. And then we did some cost saving measures. So we were staring at two options: either we cut costs or we save costs, right? And then if we had to cut costs, then that would also have meant that we had to probably part ways with a few employees, or we have to probably, like, I mean, cut down on some headcount and all of it as well. And that did not at the time come out as a very sensible decision, right? I mean, because if you then let people go, where can they find jobs? Because nobody was hiring as well, right? So we were, the approach we took was, we will not cut costs, but we will save costs. And that really meant that, some of us as co-founders, we all went with zero salaries as well. And then a lot of people in the management was willing to take a salary cut as well. And we also we also did a lot of cost saving measures, like postponing salary hikes. We deferred the variable disbursement of the variable pays and all. And here I must admit that employees were extremely understanding, and they were actually willing to do anything possible to make sure that we are collectively safe and are able to come out of this situation. So that was really a big, nice, feedback, and a show of gesture from all the employees. So that kind of really gave us confidence that we collectively can come out of this situation. And slowly but surely, things started improving on the business front. And by September, October, we started seeing a big jump in the IT spends as well. We rolled back all of the cost saving measures, and we also did some token, as a token of gesture, we also topped up whatever money we had asked the employees to part with. So we made sure that all of that measures were rolled back, and then we returned or paid those money back to all the employees as well. So those were really tough times, but then with all the collective help and effort of everybody in the company, we were really able to come out of that situation. And I would certainly take this opportunity to thank every one of them wholeheartedly for stepping up during those tough times.
Right. I mean, that was really great because during the COVID-19 time, we saw, great companies, like very gigantic companies in the space laying people off. Some of the very, successful startups, so to say, at that till that point, shutting down. So when all of that was going on one side, what, how did you ensure that, like, how did you maintain your composure, and then how did you come up with this entire plan? And because it was very easy to say, if someone like that one company is laying off, I can lay off, right? The what you mentioned is about, having employees' health taken care of, their professional careers taken care of. So this sort of empathy, right? How do you cultivate this culture in company? It could be, EQ, it could be empathy, in a company where, at times where it is, extremely needed, right?
Yeah. So see, I think COVID, that was a very one-off. I mean, that was an extreme situation. That was really like an act of God or a completely unexpected thing. And what actually gave me a lot of comfort and confidence was the feedback from my colleagues at Tarento or the company itself, right? So people were more than happy to do everything possible. So I mean, collectively, or even the feedback was, we will not lay off anybody, unless it is absolutely necessary. So the whole thought process was, avoid layoffs as much as possible, right? And
Did it ever cross your mind? Did it ever cross your
no,
mind?
so see, that's, I must admit, yes, because there is always a see, it's tough to decide between two rights. So do you? I mean, have you heard this? Story where you have an option to save only one, right? I mean, like there's an there are some of these moral dilemmas, right? So what do you do for a collective good, right? I mean, do you spare a few people, or I mean, like so it's like in an effort to save the entire ship, there's a chance that the whole ship drowns. Instead, you probably, like, take the
Offload.
option of, yeah, offload a few people, but then save this, right? So luckily we never had to get into that situation. So as I said, right, about 30-40% of our business really vanished in the first 2 weeks of COVID.
Because that's huge.
Yeah,
chunk.
so and that was, we were kind of reaching the limit of our own tolerance as well, right? Beyond that, the whole ship would sink. So if we saw a bit more business vanish, then maybe we had to resort to layoffs. We probably had to resort to much more deeper cost cutting or cost saving measures as well. But luckily enough, again, as I said, we didn't act in haste. We had a series of steps, and we were kind of really measuring, the levels up to which we can stay on our own, and beyond that, do we then probably, ask more money from any of our investors, or we probably will have to do some other cost saving measures and all. So one of the cost saving measures that we did was also to negotiate rents with our tenants and landlords as well, right? So broadly speaking, letting people go was the last option that we wanted to exercise. If the water was above our head, then maybe we had to kind of resort to that avenue as well. But luckily, we were able to start sailing in a much more calmer environment before we had to take that
Take that
last
step.
option. Yes.
Sounds great. So, like you mentioned, right? Like you mentioned about the problems that you had to face during COVID-19. So, there was a plethora of problems, so to say. Moral dilemma on one side, economics on one side, growth on the other side. In these situations, of course, for any leader, it becomes very difficult to remain calm, focused, etc. So, in my experience of over the last 8 years, where I've met and worked with different leaders, something that you stand out in my opinion, is that even at high pressure situations, I've seen you being very calm and composed and not losing your focus, right? How do you cultivate that? And first thing is, how do you do that? Second is, if I have to cultivate the same, how would I do that?
No, I honestly believe that there are a lot of other people who can handle things better than I do. So don't be surprised when you meet such people. On one thing, I kind of learned very early in my career is that not to, lose oneself at work. Somewhere, somehow, during my work stint at Infosys or in Oracle and all, that was an implicit learning that I kind of got from my leaders or managers. I had rarely seen anyone lose their temper in a professional environment, or on the work floor, so to say. So that kind of stayed with me forever, is how I would look at it. So I really try to respond and not react as much as possible. Of course, I have my own, weak moments as well, right? So nobody is perfect and nobody can be perfect as well. But then I certainly, consciously avoid confrontation at work. If you have to give a strong feedback, you better do it one on one rather than just try to assert your dominance by being a loud mouth on the floor. And this also works well in a Swedish culture. We are headquartered in Sweden, right? So a lot of Swedish culture is something that is implicit to Tarento. And in Sweden, the Swedish way of living is really to avoid conflict both at work and in the personal spaces as well. So I kind of try to follow as much as possible. And broadly, again, this whole group of friends, Rahul, KD, and all, we are like super critical of each other. So if somebody is harsh in a meeting, if somebody kind of is crossing the line, then you get a lot of feedback on the side itself. That hey, calm down types. So that certainly happens. So I again, in business, a lot of things go wrong, and when you're surrounded with, when there are so many people, right, there are always differences. You probably will not agree to everything that the other person wants to say or does as well. So, and things can certainly go wrong. So when things go wrong, it's important to focus on what went wrong and how they can be corrected, rather than try to find the person who committed the mistake and try to shoot him or her, right? I mean, then you are really not solving the problem itself, right? So that's really what I kind of tend to look for. Identify the problem, correct it so that the damage that it has caused is pretty limited. And of course, if you have to share a feedback to the person who was majorly responsible in doing it, then you kind of do it more on a one-to-one as a constructive mechanism, rather than trying to find a person to pin the blame on.
Correct. So I think from what I understand, the secret lies in being very objective about it, rather letting your emotions take over and then react, is what I understand.
Yes.
But yeah, that's it.
I must also share a story here. So again, nobody is without their imperfection. So there was a time when I kind of would get agitated when somebody cuts my lane in, when I'm driving. And there's a very interesting story. So KD and I were driving on our way to Electronic City, and then somebody cut my lane, and then I kind of was really honking and then really try to stop that person. And then KD told me something that was very, very interesting, and it has made a good impression with me. He said, I'm your friend, I will support you in whatever you do, but you decide whether you want to fight with him or you want to go home safely. That was a very, very insightful message or a statement. That made me realize that the most important thing I have to do is to reach home safely. Right? I gain nothing by picking a fight with that person or trying to overtake him and then cause one more mishap or an accident, so to say. So so that's where, even if somebody makes a mistake, then you don't alter your course, but instead really try to improvise it and do better, so that you end up achieving your own objective. So that incident, I keep recollecting it all the time whenever something wrong happens. As long as you focus yourself on the eventual outcome which you have really planned for, then the rest of it is noise. Try to ignore it as much as possible.
Correct. So driving the conversation to a different tangent at this point, but still sticking to entrepreneurship. So one thing that is a common understanding, or a common thought process, is that if you look at different communities, right? So there are few communities which have been extremely successful in terms of entrepreneurship. It could be the Jain community of India. It could be Jews, for example. So small communities, but for some reason have shaped themselves in such a way that they have become very successful in terms of education. They have been successful in terms of entrepreneurship as well. One thing that I hear, especially in Indian societies, right, apart from maybe it could be Hindu societies or Brahmin societies particularly, is that some amount of traditions that these communities follow, or it could be not completely religious, but yeah, it's basically in your way to get good education or to become very successful. A major roadblock is traditional orthodox way of living, right? Since you also come from a Brahmin family, which is pretty well connected, since you mentioned Mantralaya and all, so you are aware of the culture around Mantralayam and everything. Do you believe that these traditions are supportive of your goals, or are in one way, or are one way blocking your paths to your success, maybe by causing some sort of distraction? So what do you think about this?
So I would certainly, in my own personal experience, the family background, the way of upbringing, the culture and all have certainly helped me for sure. And if I could go back in time, I would probably not change anything of it for sure. And here I would argue that our community has typically done well when it comes to education, for sure, right? Maybe it was by circumstantial compulsion as well, because I don't think this was a rich community, so to say, right? I mean, people probably were always from the middle class or the lower middle class family, so to say, I mean, without a rich wealth or legacy being passed on from the previous generation. So unless people worked hard and studied, it was very difficult to get a job as well, right? So I think that way a lot of people have done well by virtue of their educational qualifications, right? So they have kind of really worked hard, done well in studies, and that has really helped them elevate their social and financial standing as well. At the same time, some big good names like NRN, right? They stand tall when it really comes to people from this community making a big, nice, impact that has changed lives of thousands of people and their families as well. So, I mean, I think one of the strengths that I would argue we have developed over the course of last few decades and years is to do well in studies, and I think that lays a strong foundation for whatever you want to do in your future life, be it job or be it business or be it higher studies or whatever. I would certainly argue that that's one very good uh, you know foundation or a attribute that runs in our community, and I would certainly uh, believe that that's a big strength that has really helped us in the past and that will help us in the future as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think Mr. Narayan Murthy, Suhamurthy are definitely the things that they've done in the past and the things that they're doing now is definitely a lot impactful and also pretty inspiring to a lot of people. So yeah, I think, and we hope to see more such people, not just in the community but across the country, across the world, doing such impact. Uh, but apart from this, right? So say for example, there is one view. Maybe it might not be a very global view, but there's a view that India is a country of snake charmers, right? So there are even now people believe that India is a country of snake charmers. Maybe some, I don't know, maybe they're ignorant, they are not. It's up to them. So today, to see this in India, to see so many startups in India, to see Infosys and all of that, to transition from that to this. I mean, I'm not going to say that we were at any time a country of snake charmers, but to move from that to this, do you feel that we had to let go our Indianness to become more and more Western and modern to reach the amount of development that we have reached today, or have you not given up? We are still as Indians as we were then, and still have achieved whatever we have achieved.
The way I would put it is, humanity and any culture has always undergone changes. So what we are experiencing is probably no different from what some of our forefathers would have experienced in the past as well. So I mean, uh, if we resist change, I think that's a far more you know uh, undesirable thing rather than embracing change. Of course, at the same time, you cannot embrace change at the cost of your values and value system as well. So I think as Indians, we have been able to balance things to a large extent. So I would really put it as, we have had the knack and the ability to choose the best of the change and kind of embrace it and then make it as part of life rather than we changing completely altogether. So somewhere somehow I think we have that knack and that has really helped us get the best of both worlds, I would argue.
I think that is one thing. So, but uh, do you think, since Indians and the Indian civilization, right, in itself is probably one of the oldest civilizations in the past, I kind of think that maybe there was a lot of development that happened in the history, and there were a lot of enterprises in the past, but due to the things that happened in the last few centuries, right? Maybe we were taken back a few years, and that caused this whole view of India not being such a developed nation, and maybe that created a view that if Indians continue the way they are right now, they'll never be what they have become today, right? So uh, maybe I think, yeah, like you mentioned, we always had the knack, but then circumstantially we were somehow taken back a few years, and now I think we are again bringing back those days. Is what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. So no, you certainly have a point, and see, we were never an uncivilized country, right? So even when compared with any other country or a civilization, right? Uh, India, the entire subcontinent was always a civilized, you know, place or a nation for sure. Uh, are we a developed nation when it comes to the current set of standards? I would argue no, we are not. But we are certainly getting better in terms of the overall country GDP list as well. And I don't think we ever lacked civilization. Of course, during the colonialism, education and literacy took a beating for sure. So some of those factors have certainly improved, but we did not need the West to come in and teach us civilization. In fact, we were always the forerunners or leaders in terms of being civilized or being a civilized society for sure, right? So, I just want to make sure that we are not confusing development versus civilization,
Yes.
right? So that we never needed any lessons from anybody, right? We were super civilized even before the majority of the world, really had woken up as well. Of course, we kind of lost a bit on the industrialization race for sure, and then that's probably one of the reasons why we could not really catch up on the development, quality of life indexes as well. But I would argue things are certainly getting better. One place where I really feel we should do much better than what we are doing right now would be around poverty elimination. I would still argue that um, a decent majority of the country still, lives and reels under the poverty line, and that's really something where my heart goes out. So if you ask me, that's certainly one place that we should really do well, so that people really don't die of hunger, don't lack access to basic education, health, and
Sanity and
sanity and living facilities for sure.
I think one of the reasons for poverty, of course, there are a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons for poverty is growing unemployment is something that I believe. And the recent studies have showed that a lot of Indian engineers are unemployable, not employed but unemployable. As an entrepreneur who manages projects, speaks to so many engineers on a daily basis, or maybe even interviews a lot of people, why do you think that's happening in India? Why are our engineers becoming more and more unemployable?
I think you probably are hitting the right nerve. I don't think it's a lack of jobs. I think it's really the lack of the right suitable people. So, that's certainly something that needs a lot of work. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you are a graduate and you are unemployable. It's a different story if there are no jobs available, right? So that's the second level of problem. But the first level of problem, which is more graver, is there are opportunities, there are jobs, but the graduate is not fitting into that role or mold, so to say, right? So I think that's a far graver problem, and I actually see that trend even in some of the IITs. I recently went back to my alma mater as well, and then there are a lot of kids who are still struggling to find jobs, and you know. That's probably because they are not catching up to the needs of the current time, so to say. So it could be even as basic as communication, right? So good or bad, right or wrong, that's a different debate, but English is certainly a much needed skill today for people to be able to get jobs, right? I mean, so and if people, I mean, I have found a lot of people who really want to get into good jobs, but they probably haven't spent enough effort to polish their own communication skills as well. It could be that, or it could be that they have really not. It's like this again, right? A lot of jobs today are in the IT and the computer science sectors for sure. So, if you are aspiring to get a job in the IT industry, then what IT skills do you have?
Correct.
Right? So, I mean, I think a lot of it really also has to go back to the kids and the students who are struggling to find jobs, in terms of how they have made themselves to be job ready. And a lot of avenues are available. I mean, in our own ways, even in Tarento, we do a small program around finishing school. But then, beyond us, there are lots of people who kind of even do this as a CSR activity or a pro bono activity as well. So, I mean, my take is, if you are struggling for a job today, again, it probably is because you haven't really utilized your last 3 or 4 years of your graduation program in the right fashion.
Right. So there was an interesting insight that I found out a few days ago. So one of the reasons why Germany became so successful is because one thing is having enterprises in a distributed way, not centered across big cities but in smaller cities. Second is when enterprises work very closely with colleges to skill students up to and make them job ready, or make them aware of what they need to be what they need to be upskilled with, right? So in India, do you think companies like Tarento or bigger ones can come up with a scheme where students can, or companies can work with college and getting people job ready and solving the problem that we just discussed?
I think what you said is really one good way to bridge the gap. I mean, I can answer it in two ways. Where in my own alma mater, there is always this industry institute interaction cell, so to say. So they kind of try to map the changing or emerging patterns that happen in the industry and try to bring them in the institute for sure. In Tarento, what we typically have been doing in the last few years is we run a project called Ekalabya, and we have opened it up to institutes where we go for campus placements. A few of them in the south of India, where it's a platform where kids can sign up and then know what it means to be job ready. The first and the foremost thing is, do they know what it means to be job ready? So we are trying to really bring out those aspects towards them, try to really help them, understand what it takes, what it needs for them to call themselves as job ready, and also offer a series of courses and mentoring programs so that the skill gap is bridged as much as possible.
So I think we are almost towards the end of our discussion. I know we can go on forever,
Yep.
but then
No, it's been a great discussion. I have enjoyed, having this conversation for sure.
yeah, thank you. So the way we end it usually is with a rapid fire. So I have a few questions for you where I want you to answer maybe in a word or a sentence at max. So are we good? Shall we start?
Sure.
Awesome. So my first question: why start a business?
To gain rich experiences.
Okay. Key to your success?
My friends and family.
Okay. One source of daily motivation.
My wife, I would say.
What is your favorite spiritual practice?
Going to temples, and especially a couple of them are pretty close to my heart, Mantralayam and Tirupati. So that's really something that I enjoy whenever I'm there.
Your role model.
I have a few for sure. I certainly have more than one role model. So that way it's slightly difficult to answer. But one of the persons that I have always admired in life would be Mahatma Gandhi.
Right. One book you keep reading all the time.
There are actually a bunch of books I keep reading all the time. So right now I have started to reread Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. But one book that I would have read more than once would be this book, Godfather. I really like that book quite a bit.
Oh, awesome. One tip for work-life balance.
I believe in work-life integration rather than work-life balance. Again, I'm not playing with words, but at least I would argue that the current generation that we are in, it's very, very difficult to have uh, them separate. So instead, try to integrate them, draw the best of both worlds so that you can really enjoy both.
Awesome. One biggest myth busted in your life through your journey.
There's nothing called overnight success. Life's a long journey, success a long journey. It's a lot of hard work. But if somebody says you can become successful or rich overnight, then they're taking you for a ride.
One habit that every entrepreneur must have.
Patience and don't give up.
One way you relieve your stress.
I do a lot of walking and talking, so both are my avenues to, vent out stress and frustration.
Okay. So if you are not a CEO and a co-founder, what else would you be? What are your alternate choices?
Oh, I would love to be a teacher. I come from a family where there are a lot of teachers. My own brother used to teach in an institute. My sister used to teach in a medical college. All my aunts are teachers. So, that's really an unfulfilled dream for me right now. I would love to go and teach in my alma mater if I ever get a chance.
What would you do if you woke up as Nikhil Kamath one day?
I would love to. Yeah. No, I mean, I think whatever he and Zerodha have done, is really really nice. I think that's like the next generation of Bangalore entrepreneurs that have changed the face of the city. So big kudos to him and his whole organization.
I mean, we all would want to wake up as Nikhil Kamath one day. I think. Well, so, what is your go-to mantra?
You know, So I think I draw a lot of strength from the surrounding. So if you put me in a positive surrounding, I become more positive. If I'm kind of in a place where it's depressive, then I kind of really wither pretty quickly. So I typically would love to love to stay in a place or be in a place where there's a lot of positive vibes and positive energy. So the whole ecosystem, being positive is really something that makes me feel happy.
Right. One advice that you would like to give anyone who is thinking of starting their own company.
Yeah, I think that's something that I certainly, would like to share my thoughts. Listen to your heart. If your heart says do it, then absolutely please do it. But again, in the process, don't burn your parents or your friends or family's hard-earned money. So you will need some money to try. You will need some money to take risks, but then don't drag others into the mix. But more importantly, listen to your heart. If your heart says yes, this is something that you would like to do it. Life is too short for not trying new things. So let it not be a regret that you carry for the rest of your life. But there is nothing wrong in trying. As I said, listen to your heart. If your heart says do it, then by all means, go do it.
Okay. Awesome then. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you so much for making time and coming to the Yotma podcast. It was great talking to you. I mean, I personally learned so many life lessons, education. Although we keep talking back in office as well, but this was a very longer duration that we had a chance for. So thank you for coming. Thank you for guiding our youth, guiding the entrepreneurs, guiding the students, even parents to an extent. About entrepreneurship. So yeah, we would like to have you again back whenever you have time for us. But yeah, thank you so much.
So my pleasure. Big thanks to this entire team. All of you guys have really worked hard. To make a series of episodes like this. So big thanks to you and big thanks to this entire institution, which is also letting you run this exercise as well. So big thanks once again and all the best, guys.
Thank you so much.